questions and answer period now, and I will begin. Feel free to make your way to the microphone at the back of the room. This question comes to each of the candidates from the Carleton Place BIA. In almost all Ontario municipalities, small business owners and commercial tenants through their rent shoulder a much higher burden of property taxes than do residents on property of similar value. Carleton Place is no different, with commercial owners paying 2.5% times the tax rate as compared with residential owners. 2.5 times, did I say percent in there? I'm sorry. Paying 2.5 times the tax rate as compared with residential owners. The question is twofold. They're short answers, by the way. Do you agree that small business owners are being forced to burden more than their share of the property taxes? That's part one. Part two, will you work on behalf of the small business owners in this community to rectify the problem? So do you agree there's a problem, and will you work with them to rectify it? So we'll start with Wendy LeBlanc.
Yes, I agree that there is a problem. I think that you should know, though, that the tax rate for commercial, also for large apartment buildings that we call MURBs, those rates are not set by the town of Carleton Place. They are set by the county of Lanark. And we are actually addressing that issue right now at Lanark County, looking at what we can do to spread out the tax problem, and I think it is a problem, to spread it out more evenly among all the taxpayers. We have to realize, though, that if one area goes down, another area goes up. So it is definitely a balancing act.
Jerry Flynn.
Yes, I agree it's a problem, and I agree.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
I agree it's a problem, and yes, I agree that taking a look at it and see if we can do something better.
Rob Covert.
We're all going to agree on that every one of our taxes are too high, there's no question about it. I've done business in the downtown for 40 years almost in my life, and you do pay a hefty fee. And the council has tried to make some efforts, and I'm sure we can do more. We do have development fees waived in our downtown. That doesn't help with direct taxation, but it does help develop a more thriving downtown if developers can build in our town at a little cheaper rate than they might otherwise. So yeah, sure, it's a constant problem, and we should all work on it continually.
Louis Antonakos.
Of course, yes, it is a problem. As the mayor has quite rightly pointed out, this is a rate that's set by the county, which is why it is important that the mayor and deputy mayor who go to county council lobby to have this rate adjusted so that it is balanced and fair for all residences, businesses, landowners, and institutional type of commercial development. And that, in fact, is actually higher than the commercial. There's actually 3 or 4 categories. We've got industrial, commercial, residential, institutional. So I think that work is better suited at the county level. So that's my answer.
Thank you. All right, you can clap. Seeing individuals at the microphone, we'll go to the next question there.
Thank you, Donna. My name is Brian Turner. I have a question for candidate Antonakos. Seniors housing is important. You'd have to be from another planet not to have heard that tonight or any time during this campaign. Yet less than 2 years ago, at a policy review committee of council, you were one of only 2 councillors to vote against the staff recommendation to issue a development permit to create a 30-bed seniors residence on Laura Street. Your campaign literature today, like everyone else's, supports seniors housing. So how do you reconcile your words of today with your actions of 2 years ago? And if it was that important 2 years ago, why were you unable to convince other councillors to join you?
That's a 2-part question.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. That's a good question. Brian, you are correct. I did vote against that initiative. And I'd like to point out that the reasons I voted against it are the same reasons that that same unit has not been built. It did not happen. So, and the reasons why I voted against it were simple. The residents that had concerns with that development were not satisfied with the discussion. And based on that, I voted against it. And I'd like to distinguish one important factor here. that was not an affordable seniors housing complex. That is a very expensive and exclusive type of development in the downtown core. What we have heard this evening is about affordable seniors housing, not expensive units in an expensive area of town. So I think it's important that we distinguish between those two facets, Brian. I think they're completely different, and I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Next question, please.
My name is Paul Dolmich. I'm a resident of Carleton Place. I have some knowledge of municipal politics. I've stayed out of municipal politics for 4 years so that our mayor would have an opportunity to mold the town to her ways. And up until this weekend, I would have continued with that. We've heard tonight about taxes and water bills and greening and how great it is. Well, in our backyard on Thursday and Friday of last week, the town clear-cut 22 acres of bush without a permit, without approval from the county, without an environmental study. They might put a snow dump there so that the salt and road material will drain into the only place in the community where there are actually still wells, about 10 of them. So my question is three-part. It's directed at Mayor LeBlanc. Number one, how did you clear cut without the correct permits and without circulating the neighbors in that area, for which we got no notification? The environmental study, part two of the question, the environmental study, which has not been done.
Mr. Dolmage, you'll have to make it quicker.
Okay. I want to know what the impact's going to be on the wells, and I'd like to know, well, most of you answer those two questions, and I'll be fine with that, Mayor LeBlanc.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the question, and it's a difficult one. Certainly, we've heard some pushback from some of the neighbors in the area, wondering just what's happening in that area. The town has done its due diligence on that. There have been open meetings. We had a public meeting that was probably one of the best attended public meetings that we've ever had in our community. We held it a number of weeks ago over in Carenbeck Community Centre. Like I said, it was well attended, it was well presented. People knew what was going to happen in that area. For a very long time, we've needed a new snow dump here in Carleton Place. For those of you who live in the area of Sinclair and Packet Drive, you know darn well that we need a new snow dump because you're tired of hearing the beep, beep, beep of the backup of the trucks every night. So that was well advertised, it was well attended by members of the public. Once people understood what was happening there, I think it's something that we can be very proud of. What we're going to see is not only the paths that were located there in the past, we're actually recreating or creating brand new paths and walkways in that area. So we're having a snow dump. Our public works yard is going to be moving there eventually. The paths are going to be across the berm around the snow dump and connecting with the paths that lead through the clergy reserve. We're also in that area creating a much needed, better dog park than the one that we already had. These plans are in place and the town has done its due diligence in putting this forward. It's done everything it should have done.
Thank you. I'll read a question now. And I'd like an answer from all four candidates. Could you please explain what return we've seen from the approximate $500,000 spent on salaries and activities over the last 2 years for the Economic Development Officer and the initiatives of that office? Please include the number of new jobs created in your answer. Jerry Flynn.
I can answer that one word. Disappointment.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Disappointment. One word, disappointment.
Thank you. Rob Colbert.
Donna, you yourself said on one of those committees, you tell me what we've been doing.
I've
The
asked the
Economic Development Committee is where much of this money is channeled through. It's not $500,000 thrown at advertising. It goes to the cost of the staff, it goes to the cost of the contributions we make to the BIA and to the Chamber of Commerce. All those types of budgets go into that particular pot. The Chamber of Commerce receives about $40,000 a year, and they're expected to produce a tourism plan and activity for our town. We contribute a small bit to our VIA. We don't give $100,000 to the VIA to plant flowers, that many of you have been talking about. We give them $6,000. But in terms of the overall economic thriving status of our community, I'm sorry, I don't have a specific number of jobs that have been created, but I can tell you from my personal experience and my personal business, we do have jobs available in Carleton Place. We need more jobs available. I've seen the economic development coordinator that we've hired. That was an issue in our last election. She has brought at least a mess of information. I'm saying a mess, not a mass, but a mess of information into the town hall and tied it up into a workable package. Now when you call the town hall, you can at least get an intelligent person to give you information about the town and talk to you in a sensible way. We heard earlier that inferred that our economic development coordinator and our council did nothing to do with the DRS plant closure, and that is absolutely false. There's no truth to that whatsoever. The second we heard there was a problem with the plant thinking of moving, they informed the town hall what their situation was. Our staff and our mayor went to speak to them directly and did everything they could possibly do to try and find ways to entice them to stay. As it turns out, they made a decision long ago they wanted to be in new facilities, 20 minutes down the road in Canada. Not one single job is being lost there. Unfortunately, those aren't jobs that are going to be retained in Carleton Place. About half their labor force lives in the Carleton Place area. The building is still there and it's still paying taxes. We will have a challenge to have that building converted and made into a working, viable business again. Empty as it was 50 years ago, hopefully we can get another 50-year run on that part of it.
Thank you. Wendy LeBlanc.
Thank you. Rob has provided with you with a breakdown of where the $500,000 has been spent. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it's been well spent. All of us who were sitting around the council table voted on an economic development platform last time, and we came through with that. We hired an economic development coordinator who has represented our town very well, who's gotten to know our businesses and has served our businesses very well. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have done is we've annexed other properties into our community that are looking at the long term for our community. More industrial land, more commercial land, more residential land for our community. We've had new businesses open. We've had Sam Batt come here, more than 25 employees here. We have Eastway Tank has come, 35 employees and growing. We've had businesses grow, Dyka, Triacta, and Rose Integration. Those businesses are growing in our community. How did that happen if it wasn't for a council and an economic development officer who made it work for all of us? Ladies and gentlemen, economic development is growing here in Carleton Place. We're a strong community. We've got lots to grow on, lots of strengths, and we're going to be even stronger after our next council takes part in more economic growth here in our community.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, look, we campaigned very heavily on hiring an experienced economic development officer. I want to be respectful that the individual that we're talking about is a town employee. Having said that, we did not honor our promise to you. We hired a young lady who's fresh out of school, who needed to be mentored, and I don't believe we have done that to the fullest of our potential and abilities. We have left her to come up with all of these solutions to very complicated and difficult problems. They are not problems that a graduate of university can solve in 1 or 2 years. So we need to mentor this individual and work with her, and the only way to do that is through strong leadership and taking advantage of opportunities that come to Carleton Place, not watching them leave our community. And I fundamentally disagree with the mayor's comments. We have lost an enormous amount of opportunity in Carleton Place. And it starts from the very small, controversial radio, right up to Hooper Street and others. I can't even begin to mention them all. So I'm disappointed, as Councillor Flynn is, and but it is what it is. We have to move forward, we have to mentor, and we have to do the best we can going forward. Hopefully that's what new leadership.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Matt Ingram. I was registered to speak at council meeting on April 2nd, 2013. a motion was raised by Mayor LeBlanc to prevent me from speaking. Assumptions were made about what I wanted to say, and the argument was made that it would be an unbalanced presentation. I was not there as an expert, but a concerned citizen who wanted to speak before council, and I followed the procedure to do so. A vote was carried stopping me from speaking. This motion promotes a council that does not want to hear from the public. I'll invite everyone to comment, but directly to Mayor Candidate LeBlanc and Deputy Mayor Candidate Probert. How do you justify such a disrespect to the democratic process?
We'll start with Rob Probert.
There was no disrespect to the democratic process. To be honest, the disrespect came from you. You had started a long email chain of strongly worded negotiations, conversations about fluoride going on for several months prior to your request to appear at council. The night that you wanted to appear at council, you already knew that there was a fully scheduled meeting the following week to talk about specifically on the fluoride topic, where we would have experts there, the medical health officer, and other people.
Please allow the candidate to speak.
That was my understanding, what you should have known. In any case, I chose to vote against it because I knew that opportunity was there defined for the following week, where a full evening was going to be devoted to the topic you wanted to speak on.
Louis Antonakos. Oh, I beg your pardon. Well, he wants a response from everyone, specifically Mayor LeBlanc and Rob Probert. So, Wendy, feel free.
A decision was made by council, and everyone voted for this, that there will be a fair and equitable basis that this discussion would take place. So that every time we had any discussion, we would have both sides represented. We had that at the public meeting. Perhaps some of you were at that meeting. Both sides of the fluoride issue were given opportunity to speak. When Mr. Ingram came to our council meeting, there was no opportunity for the other side to be there. There was no representation. That did not keep the spirit of the decision that the council had made to have a fair and balanced discussion on the topic. And that's why I asked Mr. Ingram to not speak. That's why we had that vote, and that's why it was carried by a majority of members of council.
Thank you. Do you wish the other two to address the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Louis Antonakos.
This individual came to us asking to address us as a resident, not as a professional or someone who purported to know anything more about fluoride than we did. He asked the chair of the committee to be added to the agenda, and he was granted, yes, he could speak. So that's where I separate myself from some of the comments I've just heard. The individual asked the chairman of the committee if he could speak. The chairman indicated, yes, you may. So he followed, that gentleman followed process and protocol, and we took that away from him. And I will never stand in that room and prevent a member of the public who is respectful, like this individual is, prevent him from speaking. I think it's fundamentally wrong, and I think that is why we have had problems in council the last 4 years.
It was a physical environment meeting that night. I was the chair, and Matt was a registered speaker. We allow people that aren't registered speakers on a regular basis to speak to us at council. It was blatant disrespect of a resident of this town, and I was thoroughly embarrassed.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Jamie DeVay, and this question is to Wendy and Louie. We've seen a lot of talk and a lot of debate and a lot of bantering about the hospital. The hospital is of critical importance to this town. I am deeply concerned about the hospital. I want to know what is your plan, your strategy to revitalize, redevelop, whatever your guys are gonna do, then please tell us, Louis and Wendy, what's your plan for our hospital, to save our hospital? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Louis Antonakos.
Thank you, Jamie. Look, the hospital issue is a complicated one, and I certainly don't have all of the answers. What I will tell you, Jamie, is this. I am very pleased to see that the Hospital Board of Trustees is now shifting their focus towards renovating our existing hospitals. I'm very, very pleased with that. However, some of the messaging that's coming out, and if you look at the advertisement a week and a half ago, it talked about 7 years. I'm concerned that we're going down this road of a $90 million renovation, and a new hospital, that is, on a new site, and a potentially $10 million renovation to the existing facility. I don't know how a minister of health or infrastructure would view a community with such diverging priorities. New hospital, $90 million in a province that is in trouble, folks. We are having difficulty across this land, and Ontario is no different. And to make that more complicated, we are surrounded by excellent facilities. Anywhere you point, you've got an excellent facility. Cheo, General, Almont, Perth, Smith Falls. What started as a great idea, it didn't happen for a number of reasons. It's not anyone's fault, but we need to refocus and reshift. And I believe that is putting all of our energy into fixing our existing hospital. And that's going to start with a meeting with the Minister of Health and Infrastructure.
Thank you. Wendy LeBlanc.
It was interesting to hear some of the members who are running for council in the previous debate, because there were a number of erroneous ideas, a number of erroneous messages that are being passed around and bandied around here in the community. In the last election, I ran and identified the redevelopment of our hospital as our #1 community priority. Ladies and gentlemen, it still is our #1 community priority. We've been involved in this for 5 years. That's 5 years out of something that normally takes between 15 and 20 years for a community to get a new hospital. Between 15 and 20 years, we've only got 5 years in. It's important to note that the council has a threefold job to do when it comes to hospital redevelopment. This is all it has to do. It's #1, to support and advocate for the decision that has been made by the hospital board on your behalf. Second is to engage citizens into talking and supporting the decision of the board. And the third thing, and this is important too, is when the decision is finally made that we support the hospital redevelopment with land and with financial support. Those three things are the job of council. They are the only job of council. Our job is not to make decisions about whether we renovate or whether we build on a green site. Our job is to support and to advocate, and that's what I will continue doing.
Thank you.